Good evening. You'll have to be patient with me because I have too much equipment and lots of notes, and I do have my glasses on. So, Board Secretary, could you please read the roll?
Vice Chairman Spidell.
Here.
Secretary Richardson.
Here.
Member Grant.
Here.
Member Rice.
Here.
Member Riley.
Here.
Member Aton.
Here.
Member Porter.
Here.
Alternate Member Childs. Alternate Member Faison.
It appears that we do have a quorum, and I will turn this over to the swearing in of new members, please.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'd like to invite Mr. Aaron Faison up to the podium to join me in for that swearing in process.
Good evening. Please place your right hand on the Bible and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Aaron Faison,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
protect, and defend
protect, and defend
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
domestic or foreign,
domestic or foreign,
that I will bear
that I will bear
true faith,
true faith,
loyalty, and allegiance
loyalty, and allegiance
to the same,
to the same,
and that I am entitled
and that I am entitled
to hold office
to hold office
under the Constitution,
under the Constitution,
that I will faithfully perform
that I will faithfully perform
all of the duties
all of the duties
of the Planning and Zoning Commission
of the Planning and Zoning Commission
of the City of Titusville,
of the City of Titusville,
on which I am about to enter.
in which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, you are now officially an alternate member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and you may take a seat at the position on the far table over here. Yep.
Congratulations, Mr. Fossum. Thank you for joining us. There is a second swearing in. Is that correct?
Ms. Riley's already been sworn in. She's just been elevated to a regular member now, no longer an alternate member.
Thank you very much. Since there are 7 regular members here, let me urge that the alternate member, Mr. Charles, is not here, but if Mr. Faison wants to participate, he can do so with questions and in the discussion. Call for the approval of the minutes, please.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of August 18th.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Oh.
I have an amendment.
Okay.
On page 6 of the agenda, it says, Member Rice made a motion to approve the comprehensive plan amendment, and Member Rice seconded it. And I don't think Member Rice can do both.
No, he can't.
Okay. So I'm not sure which one came first, who seconded it or not. You might want to check the records.
Secretary, can you check those records, please? And then correct it, duly correct. Do we need a motion to correct?
That's included in ask the motion maker if he accepts that amendment. And
I
then
accept the amendment.
And then you can ask for the vote.
Okay. Any additional corrections? Second, please. Is there a second?
I seconded it.
Oh, okay.
Discussion.
Okay. Say aye. I'll say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes are, I don't have things at the distance I need them. Is Dr. Akers present? Just thought maybe. Okay. Okay. Legal counsel, could you read the rules for participation, please?
Yes, ma'am. All persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located on the table near the entrance to the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance to the procedures adopted in Resolution Number 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. Those opposed will be heard second. And those who wish to make a public comment on the item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the recording secretary.
Thank you so much. We're going to proceed for the election of officers. At the last meeting, Chairman Stevers resigned as chairman. I was vice chairman. That's where I'm serving now. And we're open for nominations for a chairperson, please.
I nominate Member Spidell.
Second.
I second.
Is there any further nominations?
I would like to nominate Member Rice.
Thank you. Is there any further nominations? Nominations are closed. We need a member vote, right?
Yes, you can ask for a vote by name.
Vote by name, please. Okay.
There's a card on this item.
There's a card on the elections.
Yes, Dan Johnston.
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you.
I have a handout on this.
What do I hit for this timer?
Okay, it's being handed out. I think you can start the time. I'm going to try to be brief. Is that
Ms. Johnson, I'm going to interrupt you for just a heartbeat, okay?
Sure.
Please keep your remarks totally focused on either candidate, please. You have 3 minutes.
Ms. Spidell, I'm not sure that you tell me exactly what to do, because in this case is that we're talking about election of officers and so forth. And
That's
we just had an oath of office for Mr. Faison. That was important, and in that particular oath of office, it says is that you're supposed to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. As a veteran, I know that oath very well. It's almost identical to what I took. And what we have is that we have a problem here. And we have a problem here, and in my handout I've given you, this is the handout. This is the handout. The handout has numerous photos. Numerous photos, for example, I say numerous photos. And the thing is that the city of Titusville is being dishonest about these photos. The city of Titusville has these photos, FDEP has these photos, and so does the Florida Today. The city of Titusville unanimously supported a consent that is completely contrary to these photos. What I'm saying is the city of Titusville, FDEP, and the Florida Today are covering up, are dishonest in what they're saying. Now, I'm challenging you in whatever you do, your choice of officer, whoever it may be, whether it's Mr. Rice, where is he? There he is, Mr. Rice or Mrs. Spidell. Both of them are good candidates, both of them, and I applaud them for being here. But the thing is we have a problem right here in the city of Titusville with honesty, gag orders, consent, closed doors, dishonesty. And I want you to take special attention to this in your performance of office. It's a big deal. And, as you can see, I have a poster there, is that this dishonesty has permeated what's going on in the city of Titusville. And I'm hopeful that you will conduct business and that it will be truthful, which is very different with what is happening in the council meeting on many issues. So these issues have very much to do with P&Z. They're on the back of this flyer, you have a black and white one, are 12 issues which describe dishonesty. And I should say also, I should have introduced myself as I'm a licensed professional engineer, licensed to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people and the public. And this is what is a problem. And so I've identified at least 12 areas where we have difficulty with dishonesty and what's going on in the city of Titusville. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
Good
Mr.
luck.
Johnson. We'll call for an individual roll call vote. The secretary served 4. Candidate Rice, please.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Don't we just vote and we give the name of who we're voting for?
Can we do that?
Yeah, you ask the secretary to call for the votes, and they'll list the name that they're voting on.
Okay, thank you.
Chelsea, for clarity, do I call the person being voted upon?
All of the 7 regular members, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm ready.
Member Riley,
Jane Spidell.
Secretary Richardson,
Jane Spidell.
Member Porter,
James Baddiel.
Member Aton,
Member Rice.
Member Grant,
Ms. Spidell.
Member Rice,
I would vote for myself, but in light of everything, I'm going to encourage Mr. Ayton to change his vote so we have full support behind Jane Spidell.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
Jane Spidell.
I will change my vote.
Thank you, sir. Do I accept gratitude?
and then Vice Chairman Spidell.
You've got to vote for yourself.
I vote for myself. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And thank you for your patience. So stay with me, gang, and help me out here. Okay, we're moving to the first item
excuse
of
me.
business, please. And
You've opened up a position for the vice chair.
I have.
So now you
That's
can call for
right.
nominations
So-
for that position.
Yes, ma'am. Can I have nominations for the vice chair?
I nominate Member Grant.
I nominate Member Richardson.
I'll try again. I'll nominate Member Rice.
Secretary, can you do what you did before, please, and thank you?
Member Grant,
Mr. Richardson.
Member Riley,
Mr. Richardson.
Secretary Richardson,
I guess I'll vote for myself.
Vice Chairman, Chairman Spidell,
I vote for Mr. Richardson.
Member Rice,
Member Rice.
Member Porter,
Member Grant.
Member Aton,
Member Rice.
that's 4 Richardson, 2 Rice, and 1 Grant.
That's correct. That means, Mr. Richardson, welcome to the vice chair seat.
And now we need a secretary.
I'd like to move Mr. Grant for secretary.
Second.
Third.
Any additional nominations? I think that's unanimous, Mr. Grant. Okay. Congratulations.
Well, we got to vote, I guess.
No, not if it's unanimous, I don't think.
Okay.
Okay. Am I correct there?
You're good.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. What an exciting new board. Okay. I'm excited. Okay, the first item of business is I need clarification from council if there are any quasi-judicial rules that we need to review or notations that I need to make. On any of the items?
The CUP is quasi-judicial, not the third item.
So yes.
9C?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you don't have to read anything on that. Is that correct?
There are quasi-judicial rules listed on number 6 on the agenda.
Correct. I see those. So when 9C comes up, do you need to cover that, please, and read those rules?
I can if you'd like me to, sure.
Thank you so much. Okay, the first item is 9A, the Verona Village B sketch plat. And are there any cards on this, please?
Yes.
Okay.
You gotta ask staff first.
Does staff,
He's just dying to get his money.
is that it? Okay, because I've got cards first, but Eddie, I apologize. Eddie's on.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and good evening, Commission. Before I read the summary, I just wanted to ask if our other planning staff will help me hand out some of the additional items. In your agenda packet was included the conceptual drawing for the Verona master plan, and we printed it out on a larger format just so that the details are more clear. This as well. Yeah. And then the last, sorry. There's 2 in here. There we go. So that's one, that's another. Thank you, staff. So the first is the Verona conceptual plan blown up again at 11 by 17. And then the other is the trails and amenities plan that was also submitted that should have been included in the package. So my apologies there. So I'll read the summary. Verona Village B is a
Thank you very
proposed
much.
173 lot single family subdivision on approximately 117.06 acres located west of Willow Creek Boulevard and north of Verona Phase 1 subdivision. The overall Verona development, formerly known as Willow Creek, consists of 675 acres. In 2016, the remaining portion of the development, excluding Phase 1, was rezoned to the Planned Unit Development Zoning, PUDZ, to allow for an additional 1,277 residential units and 172 acres of commercial and light industrial use. The items that are included address each of the sketch plat requirements listed in Section 11 of the Development Review Procedures Manual. And then I just wanted to talk about the negotiations that the applicant worked with staff on to ultimately create this sketch plat. Thank you. So if you'll turn to page 30 of tonight's agenda, 30 of 161. This shows Verona Village B with the trees proposed to be removed and the trees proposed to remain. I wanted to call out a couple of the tree tracks and tree protection areas that were decided on after discussion. The first is between lot 16 and 17, which is more in the western half of the subdivision. You'll see there's a cypress tree and a couple other larger than 20-inch trees that are being protected by the removal of that lot. There's also between lot 69 and 70 on the eastern side of the subdivision. And then finally, between lot 74 and 75, there was 2 lots that were removed in order to create a pocket park with a stone pathway, benches, and seating underneath the trees that are proposed to be protected. Additionally, if you'll notice in the concept plan, that's the grayed out with all the subdivisions of Verona, there's a trail connection proposed on the east side of Verona B. And when staff asked for this trail connection to be made, the applicant responded that this would result in additional wetland impacts. And so the applicant, in lieu of that trail connection, has provided several trail connections and trail amenities on the north side of Willow Creek. If you're familiar with the plans, Willow Creek on the south side, Willow Creek Boulevard, I should say, is a 10-foot multi-use shared path. So on the north side, in lieu of the trail connection on the east side that would have created additional wetland impacts, the applicant has agreed to provide what's shown on that trail and amenities plan, the colorful 11 by 17 sheet that's provided to you tonight, which has some pavilions, walking trails, and seating along Willow Creek Boulevard every 50 to 100 feet. And with that, that concludes the presentation.
I'd like to say what lovely presentation, and it's readable. So thank you, staff, and thank you, developers, for that, please. What kind of cards do we have for this item, please?
One card. Stan Johnston.
Mr. Johnson?
My name is Stan Johnston. I'm a registered professional engineer, licensed to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. I do not have an objection to this agenda item. However, I want to comment about what this is based upon. So what I have is an email that I sent September 28th, and most of you should have received that email dated September 28th. And I'll read to you number 18. This is problems with the city of Titusville. This particular subdivision is based upon the comprehensive plan. Now, I have repeatedly brought forward to you about problems with the comprehensive plan. So I put it shortly in writing. It says, number 18, out-of-date comprehensive plan based on outdated area of critical concern mapping. That's number 14 in this letter. Erroneous flood zone, and that's has to do with number 6. That's erroneous firm maps. Approximate wetland mapping, in parentheses, rather than actual surveyed wetland boundaries, in parentheses, and open recreation zoning, or OR zoning, ridiculously mapped in 1993 by use of the soils map of the Brevard County Soil Survey. That's a joke. That's a real joke. That's our comprehensive plan that we continue submitting to the state and saying, oh, this is really good stuff. It's a joke on those items. Now also, on this particular item is that I have to you is the erroneous flood zones. That was number 8, number 6. And it says, over 36 years of uncorrected, erroneous 100-year floodplains disputed in 1985 by city's freshwater management study. That's 36 years. Yet unfairly and illegally concealed from the public and FEMA by the city. And I'm signing and sealing this stuff. In 2016, Alomar removed about 80% of homes from the firm map of Baker's subdivision, thus releasing some of city's victims and exposing only part of city's fraud and deception. In other words, this is proof that the city of Titusville has not been truthful to the public. That firm map is incorrect. It's incorrect by over a foot. And so I don't think this, I do not see that it affects this particular subdivision, but it is affecting another ones. And Parkland Estates is mentioned also on that. I better hurry up because time's almost up. And 1980 to present, over 40 years, such the city policy to ignore their laws. The laws. Number 1, city stormwater master plan of Greater Titusville. Number 2, FEMA requirements to preserve flood zone. And number 3, common sense and logic.
Thank you so
Can I
much,
ask one
Mr.
extra
John.
minute?
No, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Is that the last card on this item, please?
Yes.
I have a letter from Doris and Mary Spar that was presented yesterday, but I'd like to ask if any of the if all commissioners have a copy of this letter.
Yes. I have a question.
Yes.
Ms. Riley? Ms. Riley? Okay, thank you. I have some questions from staff because of the letter. So, and you all have a copy too, correct? Correct. Since we all have a copy, I don't need to do any oral reading this evening. But the Spars have raised several points. Can you answer some of those points, please?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I did respond to Mary Spar yesterday, and she responded with another email this morning asking, just trying to clarify her positions. But I'll just read my response to her. As you mentioned, the future land use designation on the property is PUD. PUDs and other master planned communities are permitted to preserve wetlands via conservation easements rather than placing the wetlands in the conservation land use per the policy you referenced, Future Land Use Element Policy 116.2. The applicant is requesting to subdivide the land. A land use change is not required. The sketch plat is a conceptual plan as described in section 34-151. At a minimum, the conceptual information that must be provided is listed in section 11 of the Development Review Procedures Manual. The maximum density that you refer to in policy 116.3 is specific to the conservation land use. This density does not apply to the Verona Village B property because the property is in the PUD land use. The maximum density for the entire PUD was established with the approval of the master plan per future land use element policy 119.12. The entire Verona PUD is 636.8 acres, of which 172 acres are non-residential uses. If you divide the maximum number of units, 1277, by the total residential area, 464.8 acres, you get a density of 2.7 units per acre for the overall PUD. Future Land Use Element Policy 116.4 establishes that certain allowable impacts may be made if approved by regulatory agencies with jurisdiction. For wetlands, that would be the St. Johns River Water Management District. Vested rights only apply to applications that receive an approval. A staff recommendation would not be sufficient basis for a vested rights claim. No, this application was not expedited. The pre-application meeting was held in March 2021. In order to qualify for the grandfathering of the tree ordinance, it only required an applicant to submit a complete application, not receive an approval. The adoption of the tree ordinance made no changes with regards to wetland mitigation. There is no deadline to submit comments to P&Z. Staff will forward comments when we receive them.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I need questions from any commissioner concerning the project or this particular answer to the SPARS. What questions might you have?
Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Riley.
Mr. Galindo, if you didn't have the PUD, is it limited to one, in a wetland situation? If you're going to comply with the comprehensive plan, is it limited to one residential unit per 5 acres? Is that correct?
Correct. So a wetland that has a future land use designation of conservation on it, the density is maxed out at 1 unit per 5 acres.
Okay, and tell me again how this went from 1 unit per 5 acres to 2.7 for 1 acre. Explain that just simply.
So the 2.7 was not a requirement. That was just the simple math of units to acreage. The change from the density that's allowed under the conservation versus what's being allowed in the entire PUD is a result of that action from council in 2017 to change to process the comprehensive plan amendment to change the land use on the property to PUD. At that point, council established the conceptual boundaries for the villages, which shows areas that are shown as wetlands and uplands. But if you notice, each of the subdivision boundaries says conceptual boundary, understanding that there may need to be some ebbs and flows in order to make to accommodate the infrastructure for the subdivision.
Okay, so when I was looking at this earlier today, these are great diagrams that you sent us. They show certain development areas have wetland markers on them. So did I understand from what you said at the very beginning that you have gotten some extra concessions from them to delete a few of those areas that are pure wetlands? Are they going to be not developed? Is that? Yeah, so, you said something about 16 and 17 and 69 and 70. Is that what you meant?
So those specifically were discussions of tree tracts. So lots that were removed in order to preserve trees, preserve additional trees and uplands on the property. The other concession was related to wetlands, in that if staff had required the subdivision B on the eastern side, there's a trail shown in light gray, and in order to construct that, the applicant would have had to destroy additional wetlands in order to create a trail, which would have required permitting through the Water Management District to destroy those wetlands. In lieu of creating that additional wetland impact, the applicant has agreed to provide trail amenities on the north side of Willow Creek Boulevard in the upland areas so that the wetland impact doesn't have to happen.
Okay, so you were able to get concessions from them to to help out in other areas. Okay, thank you.
Member Richardson?
A couple of questions. Was it Village D that we approved previously? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And do you remember what the density was on Village D?
I don't. But I will say that Village D included a large portion of wetlands to the north. And so that would have probably skewed the density if you're just accounting for total acreage of Village D and the number of units.
In full disclosure, I had a conversation with Mrs. Barr today, and she had a death in the family. They're gone to Orlando this evening. I also had a conversation with Loyalty Thompson of the Environmental Commission, and it seems like, while it may not be required, it seems like since we're talking about wetlands, this should go before the Environmental Commission. And I think what sounds like to me proper procedure is that they should apply toward this for the St. Johns River Water Management District, and then provide their sketch plat to P&Z and to council. It should be reverse what it is today. And I don't see indications of flood zones. And I've made notes because I looked at it almost all weekend. There's nothing regarding parcel size, minimum lot size, minimum square foot of houses. There's a lot missing from this, even though it's a sketch plat. Any comments?
Vice Chair, the applicant is in the room tonight and may be able to answer some of your questions.
He didn't fill out a card.
Have you filled out a card, sir?
No, I'm the applicant. I need a card for.
You can fill it out after you speak.
Okay, understood. Good evening. I'm Steve Fisher. I'm with KB Home. We're the developer and home builder. Couple things. So excuse me, the PUD that was approved in 2017 is at 1277 at 2.77 units an acre. So correct?
Slow down a little bit.
All right, sorry.
I'm an elderly woman from the South.
Understood.
And we all go to bed between 8:30 and 9.
Understood. So you'd want me to speak faster.
Well, but you just have to slow down so we get everything you're saying.
Understood.
Thank you.
So 1,277 units at 2.7 units an acre for the overall PUD. Village B, we are at 173 lots over 111 acres, which is 1.55 units per acre. So we were below the approved density for the overall PUD. The wetlands. So every square foot of wetlands that is being impacted has already been permitted through the Army Corps of Engineers about 10 years ago or so. So we have consultants that work very closely with DEP and the Water Management District to avoid any additional impacts to the wetlands. So and like Eddie was saying, we acquiesce to not providing a trail through the wetlands to avoid impacts and providing other amenities to the community. I hope that answers some of your questions.
Thank you so much. Mr. Grant, have you withdrawn your question, sir?
Basically, I wanted to ask Mr. Galindo, if you don't mind, what was Ms. Sparr's reaction to your answer to her questions?
Her email to me said that she still had some questions and she wanted to do some more research and that she would work with staff to figure out if there was something that she was misunderstanding. But I do believe that she plans to attend. I know that she couldn't attend tonight. I think she plans to attend the city council meeting that this is scheduled to be heard at as well.
Of course, you object to all of her objections, right?
Well, I don't know that I specifically object, but I think that she was using the density that was shown in the conservation land use, which
Yeah.
is not what is shown on the future land use map. If you use the PUD land use, what was provided, I think, and even if you had considered the number of units and how many, so in Verona Village D, there's just less than, I think it's 4.94 acres of wetlands. So if you're allowed to have 1 unit per acre, that's 1 unit. And if the remaining acreage is about 117.
Okay, all right, I understand, thank you. That's all, ma'am.
Mr. Rice?
Yeah, I have several questions. I'd like to direct it toward the applicant or the applicant's engineer of record, either one, if you would. And my first one, I noticed on our agenda, page 17 of 161, the wetlands being isolated from each other, but then later on I see the drainage pipes and everything that tries to make that connection between the wetlands that are remaining. And I just want to make sure that when you do get to your engineering analysis, you're going to do a wetland analysis with the hydro periods to make sure that we're not affecting the hydro periods of the wetlands to a point that would cause further degradation to some of the ones that are more isolated now. Could you address that?
Absolutely. Brian Ashby with Kimley Horn, the engineer of record for the applicant KB Home. Members of Planning and Zoning Commission, thank you for having us tonight. So to address your comment, as part of our application to the Water Management District that will be going forth when final engineering has taken place, part of the requirements for discharging to wetlands is to prove that we maintain the hydro periods within those wetlands. And so the Water Management District will sign off on the engineering design that we have put together for that. We're currently in the middle of engineering right now, and part of our analysis using our interconnected pond routing software is to model the hydro periods, both in the pre-development and the post-development, to make sure that we're not over-inundating the wetlands and also not drying them out. With that also goes into setting the normal water levels in the ponds and making sure those are appropriate as well to keep the wetlands hydrated.
And that report will be sent to the city of Titusville also
It'll be the same
for
report.
staff's review?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My next question is on page 19. And there's, let me make sure I'm on the right page here. There's a note. Okay, the note says all wetlands impacted shown are preliminary approximation are subject to change during final design. And since we're approving, and it also says there's 4.94 acres of wetland impacts. And
Yes, sir.
I'm very happy that you preserved as a lot of wetlands on the site. It's the main trunk line that comes through Willow Creek Boulevard that really impacts most of the wetlands, it appears to me, for roads, and that's what most of the impacts are. There's a few lots that intrude a little bit in that. But when you say it's an approximation and subject to change to final design, are we at 90% sure that this is the impact, or are we 100% sure?
We feel very, very confident with that number. The notation in there about subject to final engineering, as part of the sketch plat approval, if staff determines that anything we do when we submit for final engineering is a substantial deviation from the sketch plat, that null and voids our approval from P&Z and City Council of the sketch plat. So our level of confidence, you can actually see in our plan, where we've already pre-located walls on these lots instead of adding a separate slope track that would therefore impact more wetlands. We feel very, very confident with our level of engineering that we've done thus far for those wetland impacts that we've noted on our plan.
Okay. So the problem with the code is it says substantially, and there's no definition of what substantially really means, and so it's typically what staff
right. If we were to increase density,
right,
that would be a substantial change.
Right. But if you increase the wetland impact, let's say you doubled it,
Yeah.
That would be pretty substantial in my mind.
And I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's, when you have a caveat in this that it's preliminary, may change, I just want to make sure there's meeting of the minds that,
Yes, sir.
on that. On the same page, it talks about there's a category in here for uplands that are not part of lots, okay? But it says uplands, and it's right next to the wetlands, and I'm assuming you're doing that as buffers for wetlands and things like that. But I didn't see that it was being put in a conservation area. Can you address that?
Those tracts, so the uplands that are shown, that are between the lots and the wetland boundaries, will be part of the entirety of the conservation easement. It'll be uplands and wetlands that'll be within that conservation easement.
Because one of the maps in here showed the conservation area, and it looked like it only went over the wetland area.
We were showing wetlands to be that will be part of the conservation, not the actual recorded conservation easement that will come at time of final.
So that upland portion will be included in that conservation
Yes, sir.
area? Okay.
Member Rice, to add to your point about the modifications, the table in Development Review Procedures Manual 633 has a minor modification and substantial modification, and that's what we use to determine whether it needs to come back to for sketch plat approval.
That. Okay, I'm fine with that. That's been answered. Okay, I just want to confirm with staff that because this application was in, they do not comply with the new tree ordinance. Is that a correct statement?
Correct. The grandfathering, yeah.
And just the gopher tortoises that are there, will they be relocated on site, elsewhere on site in the area, or are they going to be relocated off site?
They will more than likely be relocated off-site to an approved location by the state.
Okay.
Yep.
And when you say off, will it be outside the Willow Creek Basin right there?
Yes, sir.
It will be. And I was glad to see that there's no impacts to the bald eagle nest. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good job.
Thank you.
With sketch plat, trying to avoid and try to be environmentally sensitive to that area. So I appreciate your all's effort. That's all my questions.
Does any other commissioner have questions? Mr. Richardson.
I noticed that the staff report doesn't address retention areas or parks or common areas. Why does it not? The staff report was pretty brief.
Yes, sir. So the staff report is a list of the application requirements and showing how those have been addressed through the submittal documents. So do you have a suggestion as far as how to make it easier? Should we be referencing pages or?
Yeah, I think they should be addressed.
Okay.
Would you like that on a modification or a condition? Mr. Richardson?
No, I'll wait till later.
Okay. I'd like to compliment the developer for also being sensitive to, although you are grandfathered in, but being sensitive to the new tree ordinance and at least showing that overview. Thank you. What's the pleasure of commissioners, please? Calling for a motion? Any additional? Do we have everybody? Mr. Rice again?
Well, I had my brother.
Oh, sorry.
Real quick. Yeah, I was going to make a motion to approve the sketch plat for Veronica Estates Village B as submitted.
Is there a second on the motion, please?
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion, please?
Excuse me, there's a gentleman behind me saying he has a card on this item.
Is there a card on this item, Secretary?
I'm sorry, I called it earlier before you started,
Okay.
but yes,
Okay.
Stan
his-
Johnston.
Mr. Johnson,
And twice?
Mr. Johnson has
This is a
already
new
spoken
agenda
on
item.
this.
Each member of the public is allowed to speak on each proposition before the commission.
I think Mr.
I
Johnson's
thought he already
spoken.
spoke.
I don't know if it was on this item. Was it Eddie?
Yes, it was.
That's what we're on, sir.
Are we clear that Mr. Johnson has already spoken on this item, 9A? Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Can we call for a roll call vote, please?
I'm sorry, who seconded? Okay, thank you. Member Aton,
Yes.
Member Rice,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson,
No, I think it should be tabled.
Secretary Grant,
Before I voted, I really wanted to hear a little bit more elaboration concerning these conditions for approval. You have a list of the conditions for approval.
Yes, sir. Those conditions of approval were required when the land use change was made,
Right?
and so we've received those items.
They have all been met.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Are you satisfied, Member Grant?
Yes, to
Okay.
both.
Okay. We are in the middle of a roll call vote on the motion, but we have also another motion to table. There's no, is there a second on the table? Yeah. So let's continue with the roll call vote on the first motion.
Member Riley,
Yes.
Chairman Spidell,
No.
Member Porter.
Yes.
5 yes, 2 no.
The motion passes. Mr. Richardson, would you like to?
Well, I just have a question. I'm not going to make a motion now to table it, but obviously that's not going to pass. Will it be heard the next council meeting next Tuesday, the first reading or the second reading?
I believe it's next week. Let me just see if we have it here. October 12th.
First reading or second?
For approval.
Has it had a second, sir?
No.
Okay.
And Member Grant, just to expand on the conditions, some of those conditions are being met through the submittal as the villages are being developed. So we are working on getting all of them, but for example, some that talk about the light industrial and commercial, that portion hasn't been planned out yet, hasn't been submitted for, so only those that are relevant have been received at this time.
Moving on. We are on item 9B, please. That's the CPA 1-2020. Does it have any other descriptive comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning of the Titusville Mall? Staff, please.
We have a presentation for you on this agenda item. The agenda item begins on 42 of your packet, and this is related to two comprehensive plan amendments, a rezoning petition that includes a master plan in order to redevelop the property that was formerly known as Searstown Mall. So this is comprehensive plan CPA case number 1-2020, and these are hearings to consider adoption of these comprehensive plan amendments. These amendments, the two comprehensive plan amendments, were brought before you back in December of 2020 for transmittal hearings. You recommended transmittal, which is a state term for, or a legislative or statutory term, meaning that we're going to send these amendments to the state for them to review. Council approved that and gave us to go ahead and transmit to the state. We did not receive any objections from all the state agencies related to these amendments. The Titusville Mall, former Searstown Mall, is located on the west side of US 1 and the east side of Hopkins, and I think everybody here in the room knows all about this property. The first comprehensive plan amendment is a text amendment, and what that means, it's changing the text and policies within the comprehensive plan itself, specifically the future land use element of the city's comprehensive plan. Policy 1.11.15. In order to allow this property to be redeveloped, going through to put the urban mixed-use land use category onto this property to allow it to be redeveloped according to how the applicant would like it to be developed with residential uses, they have to amend the text as well and insert a maximum floor area ratio for all non-residential uses and a maximum density of whatever number of units per acre in the comprehensive plan. I should note too that in the same policy, which currently exists, it does say that after approval, the applicant can go forward and increase the floor area ratio or density by up to 5% or decrease it without going through the amendment process. So I'm going to point out later on that this 15 units per acre calculates out to about 326 residential units. The applicant is proposing a full build out as part of this master plan to be, I believe, 340 residential units, which would be allowed per that policy statement that I just referenced. The land use, there's a second amendment is to amend the comprehensive plan future land use map. And the current land use category in the property is commercial high intensity. It does not allow any residential uses whatsoever. The proposal is to place the urban mixed use land use category on the property, which does allow residential in addition to retail, commercial, and other uses. The zoning district that's currently on the property is called regional commercial, not community commercial, as Scott stated there, which is more like a big box kind of or mall type, our most intense commercial zoning district. The applicant is proposing to put the urban village zoning district on this property. The comprehensive plan several years ago was amended to identify 3 major pieces of property in the city that would qualify for this particular zoning district. The first one is Titus Landing, which already went through this process. The second one is a large piece of property southwest of the intersection of 50 and US 1. I forget the name of the property, but it went through this process and currently has this zoning and a master plan conceptually placed on it right now, but nothing has ever happened on the property since then. Wonderlands, thank you. The third property is the former Searstown Mall property, and so they are going through this process just similar to the other 2 properties. The Urban Village Zoning District has several criteria. I've listed or inserted into your packet the criteria that they are supposed to abide by for the zoning and for submittal of a site of a master plan. And if you haven't found it already, I've placed it into page 110 of your packet. 110 and 11 is pretty important. It's a lot of generalized criteria, and we had to work with the applicant to make sure they meet the zoning district requirements for submitting a master plan attached to the zoning district. The property is just under 22 acres. There is a minimum 25% open space requirement of any master plan in the zoning district. The applicant is proposing a maximum of 340 apartment units. There'll be 2 different buildings. Proposing just under 232,000 square feet of non-residential uses. That includes retail, office, and restaurants, and also a hotel. One of the multifamily buildings will have a first floor garage or parking garage. And 3 of the buildings, all the buildings will be 35 feet, no more than 35 feet tall, except 3 of them. 2 of the residential multifamily buildings can go up, is being proposed to go up to maybe 80 feet, and then the hotel is proposed possibly to go up to 90 feet. Both, even after this master plan is approved, both of those heights would have to come back before you and to City Council for approval through the conditional use permit process, just for the height. I'm not going to go through every page on the master plan, or I'm going to give you snippets here. So one of the most illustrative one I thought would be really helpful for everyone to understand or get a clear idea of what's going on here is this image here that shows the buildings as they'll be laid out at full build out. You can see the 4 corners of this site the property owner does not own and are not part of this master plan. US 1 is on the east side or the right side of this image, and Hopkins Avenue is on the west side or the left side of this image. Country Club driveway is on the north side or the top, and Narvaez is a local road that's on the south side or the bottom portion of this boundary of this property. Hopkins Avenue and US 1 are both considered to be arterial roads. US 1 is a state road, maintained road, and Hopkins is a city maintained road. Country Club driveway is a city maintained road, but it's also considered to be a collector road. And Narvaez is a local road. There are single family homes on the south side of Narvaez. I could not find any single family homes on the north side of Country Club, mostly commercial buildings there. And again, there's commercial and on the west side and the east sides of these properties along the arterial roads. Buildings A, B, C, D, and E are primarily going to be commercial office retail, and those are located on the left side of the screen here. Building C will have the ability to front along Country Club Drive. Buildings A and B, we worked with the applicant to try and get those shifted closer to Hopkins Avenue so that front doors can be there and they can have patios out along that right of way. Buildings F and G are the multifamily buildings, and those are located towards the center of the property, and in between them you'll see the urban plaza and the pool area. Part of that pool area will be enclosed with a gate. The hotel is located just to the northeast of the multifamily buildings. And then all the way to the east or to the right side of the screen is a restaurant and a proposed drive-through restaurant, it looks like. We tried working with the applicant to see if they can create avenues or main streets through this. We think we've partly gotten there. You'll see one particular driveway, which should be designed as at least city standards as a road, but will be private, is the one that comes from Country Club down to Narvaez. And you can see there's a great opportunity there for a main street kind of avenue there because the buildings are very close to that driveway there.
Is it the one in between the orange?
Yes, it crosses that orange, actually. So it goes north-south is the road I'm referring to. The orange you see on the screen is a part of the urban plaza, and we've even asked the applicant to consider doing a raised crosswalk there or table at that intersection there where that plaza crosses, or that road, that north-south road or driveway crosses that plaza.
Can I ask a question, Steph?
Certainly.
My question there, because that caught my eye, okay?
I'm sorry?
That road caught my eye, and what I looked at was the single-family homes that are on the south side there currently have a driveway up toward the west and one toward the east, but does not have one in the middle like that currently. So why would we propose having a road going all the way through to the local road that fronts right in front of a house? So when they come out, they're looking straight into someone's house. Well, look at the aerial, and if staff proposed that, why did staff propose that?
The applicant proposed this. We worked with them based on the layout they gave to us.
Okay.
So they are we didn't suggest that we suggested they have a main street through this property and help meet the open space requirement to have a civic space there as well. But they ultimately proposed this north-south driveway you see here cutting through here.
Okay, that wasn't something required in the master plan to do that?
If you look at the criteria, it doesn't spell out in detail exactly how to build or locate buildings and create a development, urbanized development. It gives you guidelines. So we tried our best to work with the applicant to understand what those guidelines mean. And a main street was definitely one of those things. So they proposed this. I can understand what you're saying, but there are several driveways currently that do end out or open out in front of some of the houses currently as well. So yes, this is a new one. This would be a new driveway. That's true.
Would you like us to save our questions until you've totally finished your presentation?
I can take questions during the presentation.
Okay, because this is a rather complex
Yes.
set. So if a commissioner really would like to ask a question, because there's so many different levels of this, please just put your button on, please. Okay, I do have a question that kind of goes in with Woody's, though. Will there be a traffic study of both the state route and the city routes of Hopkins and US 1?
A traffic study was submitted to us, but it was based on the land uses. We asked, and that was back in December. We asked the applicant to update that. Based on I believe our engineer made some comments about it. They did provide to us a updated trip generation analysis, which is basically telling us what their net number of vehicle trips, average daily trips, is going to be from this development.
Is that based on the max of 340 units?
Yes, so it compared the existing development versus what they're proposing at full build out. And I believe our traffic engineer even ran his analysis and believed that the net increase was going to be less than 300.
And does that include a possible hotel and occupancy? I mean, is the units also, are there 340 altogether, and does that include hotel rooms?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, yes, and that's, now, even with that information, we are proposing a condition, which you'll see later on, that we get an updated traffic study so that we can understand what potential impacts might be as far as the distribution of that traffic out onto the surrounding transportation network and whether there are any improvements that might be necessary.
And will then that be advertised to those people in Lucida who use Country Club Drive?
It will be part of the requirement of a site plan submittal. So after these hearings, if this comprehensive plan and rezoning and master plan are approved by City Council, there are no further public hearings other than what might be required as far as the conditional use permits for the height of the buildings.
Review for me then how many residential units would be close to that western exposure on Hopkins that would conflict with Country Club and the entrance to Lucida?
Let me see if I understand your question. You're asking, are there residential units
Yes,
up
sir.
on that west side of the property and
yeah. How
north
much
side?
traffic would go out to to Hopkins
I
and
think
impact Country Club, which is the access road to Lucida?
So that level of detail was not created for us except for what was presented to us back in December. So I would defer to the applicant to maybe answer that question as far as how many trips are going where. And it's really going to be up to determined on a full-blown traffic study or an updated traffic study to us.
Thank you very much. Okay. Do you have more presentation for this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So actually, let me go back. On the south part there along Narvaez, there was a community meeting requirement conducted by the applicant back in December. And there was, I believe they did one recently as well, but the requirement was fulfilled back in December. And there were some residents on the south side who live on the south side of Narvaez who were concerned about the visual impact of this development. So the applicant has proposed a solid screen along the portions of the development along Narvaez that will include landscaping and a decorative fence. And here's another image perspective of that as well. That's on the master plan.
How many houses on that south side, please?
I can't tell you offhand. I'd have to look at a area
But
to tell you that.
there's already been a community meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
This screen right here shows you the open space plan that was submitted to us. And so everything here green is considered, was counted towards that minimum 20% open space requirement, or 25, I have to go back again, see what it was. But what they're showing is the urban plaza you see between the buildings, plus the area where the pool is located between the multifamily buildings, plus some rain gardens on the east side of buildings A and B, which is along Hopkins, where there are going to be wide sidewalks. They're going to include amenities. I'm going to leave it to the applicant to describe what those amenities are going to be, but they've identified on here what those are with a key in in the master plan. They have included some of the landscape islands inside the parking lot, not all of them, just the ones that are going to be part of the primary circulation plan proposal of this development. And those will include amenities as well, such as benches. And then lastly, there's the roof, the hotel, the roof of the hotel was proposed to be utilized as a open space plaza as well. Now, we went back and forth with the applicant about this a lot, about whether that really meets the definition of what an open space is in the code as it's written, that our understanding with that is really supposed to be on the ground. But if the amenities are there on the top floor of a building and it's open to the public, we wanted to leave that to the commission to determine whether that meets the intent, and also to city council. Now, since this agenda was published, we've had further discussions with the applicant, and I know they will address this, that they are not counting in order to meet to demonstrate that they meet the minimum open space requirement, they are not counting the roof of the hotel anymore. And so they showed me new calculations demonstrating that.
Member Grant, do you have a question just about that, please?
Well, my question was concerning this rooftop open space. I don't get out very much, so I was curious about this. I've never known this before. For instance, what would take place up there? And what if you just said that the applicant has decided not to do the rooftop?
I didn't say they didn't decide to use do the rooftop on the building, just not use it to count towards the minimum open space, which means we won't have to have the discussion with them about whether it's going to be open to the public or not, and whether there be public access.
And you said in bold print, without the hotel rooftop, the open space on the ground will be deficient and not in compliance with the urban village zoning district.
Those are my my calculations. Further discussion with the applicant, they demonstrated that they can meet it with the plan and the So in other words, they're pointing out that my calculations were in error. So I think the applicant will be able to explain this.
Member Rice?
Yeah, I would have really no problem with counting it. And the reason why is because we're a very unique community, and there's things called NASA and rocket launches and things like that I can see the public wanting to go to the top of this hotel and having the best view in town. So to me, it's a natural fit. So that's just food for thought.
Okay, I'll keep going.
Keep going.
All right. There's a sheet in the master plan that shows the street furniture, the decorative fence, and some of the amenities that will be utilized. This is conceptual. They may use other types of furniture, but this is something that we would use as a guide. We'd always use the master plan as a guide for any site plan submittals. The site plan, the next stage, the applicant will be required to submit to us a site plan. They have the option of submitting a site plan for the whole thing, which according to the phasing plan is not the case. They're going to do a minimum of 3 site plans. But they could break it out even further. You know, even phase one could be separated out as one site plan just for one building and getting the parking and the access to that and dealing with stormwater just for that. That's possible. And then do additional site plans for phase one only. In the master plan, you'll see phase one includes both the residential buildings. The applicant could come back and do a different phase first. We strongly disagree with doing a phase or finishing a phase without the residential. We believe that's really important from a planning perspective and making sure that we have feet on the ground as part of a mixed-use development, since it's part of what the applicant's proposing here. So we did include a condition related to that, and I'll address that in a moment. During the site plan process, our regular process will require potentially the need to go through waivers that might have to be administrative waivers to technical issues or to waivers to our development review committee. And some of you know that is made up by our staff members and our city engineer and members of other departments to determine whether there's a waiver from a code or a technical matter rather is warranted. So that will be dealt with during the site plan process. Sometimes there will be a need for variances. One thing we pointed out to the applicant is that you're probably going to need to get a variances for the number of signs that are being proposed. The code has a maximum number of ground signs that are allowed, and so they're proposing more than that. They probably will have to go and get variances to that, and that's a separate process that goes before the Board of Adjustment. That's not something that's going to come before you. Conditional use permits, which I've already mentioned. The code, the urban village zoning district specifically says anything that's going to be more than 50 feet has to have some kind of other use inside that building. But if you go, and you can go up to 60 feet. Anything beyond that, then you have to go and get a conditional use permit that will come before you, and will have to get city council's approval.
May I ask a question at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
When you say feet, I need to know stories then, please.
So I believe the applicant is proposing in the hotel, for example, 7 stories.
Okay,
But,
and that's at the 90 feet.
yeah, so the master plan maximum height would be 90 feet. They'll have to get the conditional use permit even after this process.
And what is it now? What's permitted now?
The code allows you to go up to 50 feet.
Which is how many stories?
I guess you could design it maybe 4 stories.
Okay. And what about the 80 feet?
80 feet, I mean, you probably design it maximum 7 stories.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Spidell, I had my light on for quite a few minutes.
I'm sorry.
I remember us talking about this as long as 4 years ago. In the Trevor Chaphagen days, we talked about it. And at one time, they were thinking about an assisted living facility. Is that true or not now?
The master plan concept that was shown to you back in December, I believe, did include an assisted living facility. It also included a sports complex as well. So this is a much drastically reduced version
And
than that.
the number of objections we had when it was presented to us, Woody Rice is completely correct. The entrance and exit in the center of the south side was the main objection, because the 2 entrances that are on the south side currently, which is what would be behind the old Publix and one at the old Sears Auto Center area, were there. In fact, I can remember when they put up a fence, a concrete fence on that whole south side, except for those 2 places. And the only objection I've seen so far that I would have is that center entrance and exit, because it'll be so heavily traveled. How are you going to screen headlights that are moving at nighttime from that house. Maybe you buy the house, make it a park. If I was the person that lived in that center section, I'd be looking for an attorney, because I think that is so bad. Well, the other two were there since the beginning. That's the one objection that I would have.
Okay. The next thing I wanted to show you was there is a lot of references inside the comprehensive plan and in the urban village zoning district about the US 1 corridor master plan. Some of you might not be familiar with this, but back in 2007, this was a very detailed vision document, planning document that was created to help facilitate the redevelopment of a lot of properties along US 1, including this property. And it included recommendations for where the buildings should be located, how that should be placed. It also included recommendations of architectural styles. And so the Urban Village Zoning District actually asks the applicant to select one of the 4 architectural styles that are identified in this master plan. And so the applicant has chosen the classical revival style. That's a very generalized style. There are several iterations of it. There's a modern iteration of it as well. But in the plan itself, there is actually an illustration of it with some listing of what kind of fenestration or details would be included as part of that facade of a building to help meet this idea of what a classical revival architectural style is. So we will use this as a guide, but we're not going to hold applicants to the strict letter of what you see here on this image, because there are so many versions of what classical revival is. The conditions. I've already mentioned that about the rooftop open space. So if the applicant is going to use or count the proposed rooftop of the hotel as to count towards open space, then this condition here that's stated in your packet should address that issue as far as making sure it's open to the public. And so we went back and forth with the applicant about that. If they are going to do that, we're going to have to address somehow making sure the property owner understands that that is always going to be something that should be made available to the public, as opposed to only for the use of the people who are at the hotel. Open space, landscaping, island amenities. So we have a condition in there related to that. Like I mentioned before, a lot of the landscape islands, it's not too clear that there's an amenity there, but we did receive a written response from the applicant that they will include amenities at those islands where they are counting them as open space. Private street design. The Urban Village Zoning District specifically says that the private street shall be designed to city standards, or there will be a street to city standards, and then it gives you the option to do it as dedicating it to the city as a public road or keeping it private. Well, in this case, the staff selected that north-south road as one particular road or driveway that should meet that standard. Narvaez screening, which I've already mentioned to you, so we're spelling out in this condition that the screening that will be submitted to us as part of any site plan submittal should be as closely consistent as what they're proposing in this master plan. So if there are any changes to that particular condition, this is something we need to address now, I think.
Center entrance and exit.
That does not address the driveway entrance, no, sir. Yeah. Multifamily phasing. So the planning staff feel very strongly about this, that making sure that we don't have a possibility where there's commercial developed and one of the phases developed and then the other phases don't get developed and we don't have residential. We firmly believe that residential needs to be built somewhere up front and part of one of the first 2 phases at least. So we added that condition in here as well. Cross access. There is cross access proposed to the 3 of the 4 corner properties. So in the event that they get redeveloped, they will have the opportunity to access or do a cross access into this property. And so we added this condition in there that kind of describes how that cross access should be developed with the site plan submittal. There'll be an obvious stub out there that will make it very clear to everybody that in the event the adjacent property is developed, that they should connect there. Traffic study. I've already addressed that we are going to request that they give us an updated traffic study so our city engineer can review that. A master drainage plan. This is something that was recommended by staff, that when they submit to us the first site plan, they provide to us a master drainage plan so that demonstrates full build out of this property. And then a master sewer plan. In your agenda and on the report, I mistakenly wrote the word stormwater. Our Water Resources Department specifically asked for a master sewer plan with the submittal of the first site plan. And then sheltered bicycle racks. We went back and forth with the applicant about making sure there are enough bicycle racks in strategic areas throughout the development. We even specifically, and they did that, we specifically asked for one of them to be maybe sheltered. We didn't see that, so we wanted to make that clear that we think that should be some bicycle racks that are sheltered, especially for those people who are going to be living there. And potentially a good place for that could be in that first floor garage. So finally, our recommendation is to adopt the text amendment to the comprehensive plan, adopt the amendment to the future land use map of the comprehensive plan, approve the rezoning ordinance. There are 3 ordinances, one for each of those amendments and the one for the rezoning, and approve the master plan with the conditions that the staff has proposed. With that, I'll try to answer any more questions you have.
Do we have to have a motion on each one of those 4?
I would recommend that.
Okay. Not partial? Okay. At this point, does staff have questions, or would you like to hold your questions, not staff, but commissioners, until after the cards are read? What's your pleasure? Hold. Anybody? Okay. Cards, please.
There are 14 cards. Yep, you're first. Jesse Wright.
Mr. Wright.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I just want to go over some of the things that was mentioned earlier. There's a story behind this project. I came to the United States in December of 1973 to seek for aerospace engineering degree in Oklahoma University, and I got that. I was not able to go back to Iran, which I'm originally from, because of the hostage crisis and so on. In 1980, after I received my degrees in Oklahoma University, I was offered a job in NASA for a backup flight system because I have mechanical, aerospace, and also pilot license. And unfortunately, I was not able to obtain that, mainly because of security clearance. In February of 2018, when this property came up, I was coming out of a 1031 exchange from a property in Northern California, which I sold. And I purchased this property because it's probably the closest point of a dream that I would have to be near NASA. And just several months later, Sears was going to file bankruptcy. And I did not want the property to be tied up in the bankruptcy. They're wanting to sublease the property, 90,000 square feet. And I had to pay them to move out. This is in June or July of 2018. This is a very complex project, and I know that such a short time that you're, looking at the project, but this has been in work for nearly about 2 years. I have personally met 90% of the tenants that we have in the project. And typically, as you know, any of the development projects that you have a vacant land, or maybe in the Titus Landing, you have the JCPenney, they clear the land, and you have no issues. In this particular project, we have tenants, about 26 tenants. We are trying to do this project in phases, so we don't get in between what they're doing in terms of the business. since Sears left in June or July 2018, it's been very difficult for the tenants to do business. You can drive up and down US 1. You can see an ugly building. We've done facelift up. I've used lipsticks. I mean, I've used just about everything to keep the building look pretty, but it hasn't worked. We have tried to do a retrofit inside of Sears. We tried to bring two large firms to do business there. The cost of doing the retrofit was well over $3 million on a 90,000 square feet. So then I moved towards trying to see what we can do with Bell's Outlet that is in the property right now. And they have about 40,000 square feet. And some of these tenants, they had long-term leases. So when you mentioned about the previous project, where you saw a project where we had senior citizen living and sports center, at that particular time, I was not able to do the residential on US 1. And the reason was because we had to move the tenants that are there, like Bill's and a few other ones. And we had I've actually signed a lease with Planet Fitness and also Bill's to be moved in to the front facing US 1. And it just didn't pan out. Everyone wants visibility on US 1. And it's difficult to get retail to be on US 1 that would pay the proper price and so on and so forth. This is a very complex project. It is a very dense project. This is not another Titus Landing. And so we're dealing with multiple phases. We have to demo a portion of the mall in order to do the residential and a portion of the retail. I have committed, and I have mentioned it several times, that I am into this project to finish the whole thing. I'm meeting with the lenders coming up this month, and that's the reason I'm here. I'm originally based in California. Let me go over a few things that was brought up earlier. Based on our calculations, and I have a hell of a team here. I have a civil engineer, Rodney. I have Joseph in traffic, and also Bruce that is going to be presenting the planning portion of the project. The Openness Space, basically what is required is about 237,000 square feet. And Brad, you can check my numbers. And so we are right around 23.8%. I think Bruce can get into this a little bit further. And in terms of the parking, we have close to about 1,100 parking spaces. 910 parking spaces, including 40 handicap. And based on the traffic study of spaces and so on, we have extra 55 parking. There is no way we can satisfy the neighbors and everyone around us. This is a whole block. It goes from Hopkins to US 1. I can sit there all day and try to convince people that everyone is going to be happy with this project. One thing I do know is that if this project is left alone, sooner or later, all these businesses are going to go. There is no reason. I have promised them several times that we're going to do something with Sears. And this has been over 2 years now. And it's very, very difficult to keep promising something which we cannot fulfill. It is a dense project. We are doing it in phases. We're demoing the mall by about 50%, taking out Sears, cinema, and few of the tenants to be able to have the rest of the mall with 2 entrances. So then we can build the residential area. And also, we are considering the businesses. Again, this is very important to them because I'm talking public, and obviously they're gonna see this. So then the next item that I was going to bring up is the fact that the alternative would be very, very difficult. If I have calculated every single penny that would come out of this project to cover the debt service. This project is going to run at least about 101 to 110 million. Titus Landing was about 65 million. Titus Landing received $6.5 million when they were doing that project. I'm getting zero. So I'm on my own without getting any help from the county or the city. Very important. And the amenities. I have my general manager here that's going to discuss that. You know, we are tight when it comes to the open space. And of course, we would be open for the hotel to have the rooftop, as you mentioned, because of the rockets going up and so on and so forth. And so with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, or we can defer that later. I would like to introduce Rodney, my civil engineer, and then right after him would be Bruce, and then Joseph. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Any commissioners have questions right now? Thank you.
Thank you.
Because of 17 cards, are we going with a 3-minute, please? Thank you. Next.
Rodney Honeycutt.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. Rodney Honeycutt, 3700 South Washington Avenue in Titusville. First, I want to talk a little bit about the plan. The plan is different than what came before you previously. That happened in December. And then I struggled with Jesse trying to complete an engineering plan that he changed a few times. And then finally, I thought in April I had a final plan. I submitted it to him, and he submitted a completely changed plan, which is generally what we have now. And that's when I said, you need a planner. And so he was able to get the Catalyst Design Group, and I don't know about you guys, but I think they did a heck of a job. I think this is a great layout for everything he's trying to do in here. And so I'm impressed with what they did, and they did it without me. That layout was fantastic, and I really appreciate it. Some of the things just to mention, I know that staff presented it, but in the US 1 quarter master plan and in the comp plan, there are 3 sites that are mentioned to be urban village. The other 2 are urban village, and this one's not. This is the 3rd one. It was always planned. And they were planned to be redeveloped, and they were preferred to be mixed-use development. And this is a mixed-use development to the fullest extent. I mean, you've got the residential that people can walk to the retail, and it's just a fantastic layout, I think. One thing that I haven't heard much about mentioned is right now this is a 21-plus acre parcel, and there's about 21 plus acres of impervious area that has no stormwater treatment. And there's a stormwater line that collects stormwater from Hopkins and runs through the middle of the site, goes under US 1 and dumps into the Indian River. What this project proposes to do is meet stormwater for this site. And so all the stormwater from this site will be treated per redevelopment plan, and probably more intense than that because there's a FDOT drainage permit required too for this site. The stormwater from Hopkins, which has no treatment now, and generally the Water Management District will tell you to pass that through the site, we're proposing a baffle box to treat the stormwater from Hopkins, so there'll be some treatment there. So there's going to be major benefit for this community and for the Indian River for this project, for what it does. Also, water and sewer will be updated for this site. Of course it will. It's all redeveloped.
Continue on, Mr.
Just a couple of more minutes. There is buffering proposed on Navarez for the residential. The site promotes pedestrian and bicycling. Hopkins is the only street we have running north and south in town that has a dedicated bike lane, and we tie into that bike lane and go through the site. I'm hoping one day that US 1 has a big bike path like we've always thought about, and it'll just connect those two and provide that too. Certainly, we acknowledge that there are some waivers and variances that are required as they're mentioned in the plan. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer.
Does any member have a question to Mr. Honeycutt right now? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next.
Bruce Hall.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Hall, landscape architect with Catalyst Design in Orlando, Florida. It's an exciting project. We were really happy to become involved in it. We like where it's evolved over time. Jesse knows no limits of time of day or weekend time, but it's all been worthwhile because it has turned into a really exciting project. I would mention first that based upon staff recommendation of shaded parking, parking is reflected on page 8 in the parking garage, and it's right on the edge, so it's very accessible to the public. At the get-go of the project, we started out maintaining access to the 4 corners of the site, so we didn't inhibit any of their ingress and egress. The focus was also on the neighbors, on Country Club and on Narvaez. And particularly with Narvaez, we wanted to reduce the parking that was visible to them. We also wanted to maintain the green spaces that were largely still there, but also add stormwater as a bit of a buffer, as well as extensive planting. On Country Club, we introduced on-street parking. We thought it would be a useful tool to help calm traffic there, provide a more urban character to that street, and also to bring the buildings up to the edge of it. And I believe also there's some flooding or standing water issues that are present on Country Club, and I think this project will help resolve some of those issues. Within the site, certainly the focus was pedestrian bicycle circulation through the site for the residents as well as the surrounding community, so you can get from the north to the south neighborhoods in a safe manner. True with the east-west. The open space, we're actually at 29.7% without the rooftop, although I love the rooftop idea. I think that, given the location, it's fantastic. But we're in good shape on the open space. The open space also, we really look to amenitize the stormwater areas wherever we could and make them part of the public experience and the resident experience. So, throughout the project, there's benches, there's shade structures, there's public art opportunities. We have all the site furnishings of the litter receptacles, dog waste stations, those kinds of things. But also, we've added in a mile network within that can be used for walking and jogging. So it'd be a measured distance. From a stormwater point, which Rodney addressed, we look to use bioswales and rain gardens. So it's not just a Bahia sod dry pond out there, that it is aesthetically pleasing.
Thank you. We are tree people. We have just recently become serious tree people after 2+ years. Because this is an asphalt jungle at this point, and we know that, what amenities have you planned?
Well, certainly
besides bushes.
Oh, certainly throughout, we're at the conceptual stage, but as we proceed, obviously the landscaping that's required with the standard parking lot will be there, but also the pedestrian environments will have shade trees along the route. So whether those be in dedicated small landscape islands with a shrub ground cover planting, or they could be tree grates, so it's very pedestrian friendly and doesn't constrict the circulation. In most cases, we're running wherever we can, particularly around the retail, more like a 10, 12-foot sidewalk, which starts to get into really an urban character and allows you to plant trees right along back a curb. So now we're providing shade to the cars, but also to the asphalt surfaces. And
Thank you. Next, please. Thank you. Is there any questions right now from commissioners?
I have one.
Go ahead, Mr. Richardson.
Concerning the handicap parking.
Yes.
I'm very interested in that. At Titus Landings, handicap parking is not designed well. In fact, I had a stroke 8 years ago, and it's very hard for me to get from the handicap parking to the sidewalks because the cobblestone in the driveway, which are at different heights. I've offered, I don't know how many times, to work with the developer to design a place that's handicapped accessible. We had a member of planning and zoning a few years ago that fell flat-faced in that area. And I'm offering that again. And I'll be happy to help you. Another concern of mine is, Chairwoman Spidell said we're tree friendly. So you're going to use, I hope, a native Florida trees and shrubs.
Absolutely. And it just benefits us from a maintenance standpoint in the long term. It's, they're widely available. And certainly on the ADA, it's not only, it's a good, we want to work on the distribution. So it's logically placed. It's in places where people use it as opposed to where folks might look for a vacant spot to see a front door or something like that. I know the pavers that you're talking about, and we do quite a few streetscape projects, and where we do have flush streets with the sidewalks, and in many of those cases we're required to have some sort of a texture. There's a lot of different textures, and we walked Titus Landing, and in particular parked right next to that condition. So we could see settling in there. It's a great visual cue. It's a great textural cue. But yes, no, I understand that. And we design with that in mind.
Is there any plans, sir, in having charging stations?
We've not addressed that. It's something that we can certainly look at. There's certainly quite a few incentives that are out there available that might offset costs even through the utilities.
We'd like you to consider that. Okay. Next, please. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
Just one other brief one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any attempt to provide for bus stops in that area? I know in the past that was a major area used for Space Coast Transit coming in and picking up and dropping off people.
We've not talked about that, but certainly Country Club offers some opportunities for little eyebrows. Hopkins does as well. I was trying to recall if Hopkins was actually a transit route.
Yes, it is.
Is it?
Yeah, okay. So that would certainly be a logical place to go ahead and do that. And that could be just a simple bump out.
Yeah, I noticed at Titus Landings, they actually have redesigned the curbing to allow for the buses to come in and stop.
Yep.
So would you consider something like that?
I think we certainly can, absolutely. Yeah, and certainly the Hopkins side, as was pointed out, we've tried to bring the buildings up there, make it more of an urban character there. Bring the buildings right out to the edge. So having the transit stop there is a logical location for it and works in with that urban design there. So,
and I support the idea of charging stations. If in fact we're all going to electric cars in the next 20 years, it might be helpful to the people who are going to live in your community to have a charging station.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. I did want to mention, I think Rodney talked about, or somebody brought up the trail system along US 1. Keep an eye out. There's new grants coming out that are going to be used, matching grants to fund trails in communities. So it would be a good opportunity for Titusville to get a little piece of its own.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Next, please.
Thank you.
Joseph Roviaro.
Good evening. My name is Joe Roviaro. I'm a transportation planner. I work for Luke Transportation Consulting Groups, 29 East Pine Street, Orlando, Florida. And we did the traffic analysis. We did both a comprehensive analysis where we compared the existing land use with the maximum land use. We also have prepared a follow-up traffic study, which we will be revising to reflect the current land use plan that you all have today. And in response to your question about transit, the existing site does have transit today. There's a transit route that stops there. I think that's Route 1 and 2. They go up US 1, but they do stop at the existing mall, and I would assume that that would continue in the future. There's also a bike path that runs along Hopkins today, and there are existing pedestrian features out there. Based on what we had submitted originally, and I think the current plan that's before you, the trip generation actually will decrease based on what the plan was that you originally saw and what is currently coming before you. But if this gets approved and passed, we will be updating the traffic analysis, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all might have. Or because when we do the follow-up study, we'll actually be looking at intersections and doing the analysis at all the access points. The comprehensive plan traffic study really only looks at roadway segments. We don't look at the intersection analysis because at that level, we're looking at a much higher density because we're trying to see if it was if it had the maximum allowed development, it usually generates a lot more traffic than what is ultimately being proposed. And so when we do the access study as a follow-up, then we'll be looking at all the driveways, the intersections out there, and we also have to do, I think, a FDOT driveway permit access because they will be affecting the driveways on US 1. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Member Riley. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Oh.
And members? Thank you so much.
Okay.
Next, please.
Lisa McCotter.
Lisa McCotter, Country Club Drive. Thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening. I have known Mr. Wright since he first bought the property and worked with him for the first 2 years in trying to keep this mall afloat as far as the actual facility. We had faced many challenges. I am very grateful that we have someone who comes into our community to try to make it better for us. And seems to really have a heart for the community, which is what I have witnessed myself. Like I mentioned, I do live on Country Club Drive, and I am looking forward to being able to drive, whether I'm on Country Club headed home or Hopkins leaving, to be able to drive by something that's new and fresh and alive. And so I would just appreciate the support in this project. I do support the project being on the inside and the outside. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
William Castle.
Hello, my name is William Castle. I'm the current property manager at the mall. I've been at the mall now for close to 5 years, 2 years as a tenant, almost 4 years now under Mr. Wright on and off. And the honest position that we're in right now is this isn't just a want for us, this is a need. The tenants are suffering, the mall is an eyesore, it's outdated. I mean, there's one tree in the entire parking lot. We have 500-600 parking spaces that aren't used. We have a series of issues with the building itself. It needs a facelift. For us to progress, I feel like we're at a fork in the road. On one hand, we have this amazing opportunity to do a redevelopment. On the other hand, I fear we might end up like the Miracle City Mall, where no one wants to take on that project, and it was 6 years, I think, of just trees growing out of a building, black mold, asbestos. It was rough. So I would just like you to take that into consideration when thinking about this, that this isn't just, an us thing. We have, over 20 tenants, lots of jobs, employees that need somewhere to go in the long term. And this would provide them the opportunity to grow as a business and for us to grow as a community. So I don't know if you guys would have any questions for me, but I'd be happy to answer any that you might have regarding the current property. So.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Next, please.
Openness Garcia.
Good evening. My name is Openness Garcia, and I own a cleaning company in town. And we've been cleaning the Titusville Mall for probably about 7 years now.
A little bit closer to the mic, please. Thank you.
Yeah, we've been cleaning the Titusville Mall for about 7 years. And as Mr. Jassy said, once Sears, went out of business, it declined, the flow of the people coming in there. I think what he wants to do, it's beautiful. It's going to bring so much more traffic to the area. And right now it is just a ugly piece of property right there. And it will, I think it'll be a good thing for the community.
Thank you so much. Next, please.
Gilbert Garcia.
Yes, sir. Semper Fi. Good evening, Council. My name is Gilbert Garcia. I have a janitorial company as well, and I've been living here for many years, and I've been having the pleasure of working for Mr. Jesse for a while, and also his kindness, the way he is with people. I came tonight because I wanted to say that I think, especially from what I'm seeing, it's outstanding. More for our children, because we got to look ahead. It's for our children, for our families that come here. And nothing is more beautiful to know that we had a brand new mall. And when I have family to come from Orlando, I'm going to say, come to Titusville, come to Titusville. And when they come to the new mall, it's like, you're proud. That's our mall. Well, imagine this, the hotels and the restaurant. We got to brag. This is where we live. So anything to bring people here, I'm all for it. And I think this is outstanding what Mr. Jesse Wright is doing. So I came here to say I support it. And I think it's a wonderful idea because, no offense, who's going to be seeing it is our children or our family. So, we got to make this area beautiful. So I'm here to say I support it, and I think it's a fantastic idea. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, please.
I'm not sure if this is Heather or Heath Evans. Okay.
Name's Heather Evans. Heather Evans. I think this project is great. I come from a city, and I see a lot of this be built down there, and it doesn't just benefit the community of business, everybody. I think it's a fantastic idea. It's dead over there. There's nothing to look at. Well, I didn't even know it was a mall, honestly. So I think this will bring a lot of beneficials for everybody.
Thank you so much. Next, please.
Angela Evans.
Good evening. I'm Angela Evans. I was born here in '74. I've been here all my life. I think this is a great opportunity for people to work. There's so much. It is an eyesore, and you got it all across US 1 eyesores of all different properties that haven't been built. So I think this will do our town very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Howard Graham.
Hello, I'm Howard Graham. I'm speaking on behalf of the Rio Vista Patio Homes. We're across the street from the Sears Mall. We've lived there for many years. We absolutely love living in Titusville. We moved over from Orlando. My family and I have 2 sons. And when we heard the potential of the mall being torn down and rebuilt with this beautiful concept that Mr. Wright has presented here, we were so excited. You know, the chit chat got going with the neighbors and talking and the excitement and talking to people at Ace Hardware and all around Titusville about the potential of seeing the new growth come in, something new and exciting and fresh for the area. And we support that. We want to see that happen. We want to see the rooftop idea. One of our neighbors is he's retired now, a professional photographer for the NFL. And he had the ability to go over to the VAB building and film from the top up there. And the stories he told about the vantage point from being up high was second to none. It was just absolutely amazing. And so I really support the concepts that Mr. Wright has here, and we hope that you do too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Excuse me, Mr. Wright has a question.
You say you're with the families across the street?
Yes.
Okay. How do they feel about that one entrance in the middle?
Excuse me, we're on the US 1 side.
You're on the US 1 side?
Yes.
Okay, you're not on the nav.
Yeah. Our driveway goes right into the area there and stuff.
Okay,
and so,
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Next, please.
Neil Hunt.
Mr. Hunt.
Hi there. I have worked for Mr. Wright for the last couple of years. I moved to Titusville in 1998. I moved here because I got a job at Royal Oak Golf Club, and we all know what happened there, and who knows what's going to happen in the future, and we don't want to see that happen again. And so I'm fully in favor of that. Like I said, I moved here in 98, and I remember back from when I was a kid in the, in the mid-'70s, first coming here and going to both the malls and being impressed with them. And I'd love to see that happen again. So I'm fully in favor, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Stan Johnston.
Ms. Johnston.
Stan Johnston, 860 Poinsettia Avenue. I'm not speaking against this project. I apologize for the snafu about the calling cards, but I also want to mention is that it's my belief that when Mr. Richardson called for tabling, that does take precedence over the motion that was on hand, and that's Robert's Rules of Order. So sometime you might want to check that out. I believe this is a quasi-judicial item, and that I have a concern about the amount of time that council has spent on this regarding the comprehensive plan. It's labeled here, comprehensive plan's amendment, future land use element, and the future land use map and so forth. There's a lot of time spent on that. However, the city is not spending time on these questions. So I do have an objection about what's going on. These are photographic proof of the city of Titusville having big issues as far as this problems with the inaccuracies of your comprehensive plan. So that's all I wanted to add. I don't want to take a lot of your time, but I'd like to see this improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is that the end of the cards, ma'am?
This is the last one.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy Mott.
Ms. Mott?
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I am here representing the Titusville Antique Mall. I am the store manager, and we are one of the tenants. We have 70 independent small businesses within that one building that you know as the Publix, also known as Fred's. We have about 19,000 square feet in there, and there are 70 different people who have their wares. So I am here on their behalf supporting Mr. Wright.
Thank you. Thank you for that business, too. That's the ends of the cards. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let me clarify that this is a quasi-judicial issue. Chelsea, is that correct?
Yes, it is quasi-judicial.
Okay. At this point, I need open for discussion. Mr. Richardson?
Yes. Mr. Wright, I guess you understand from my questions here, they're at the minutia level. I think we all, if I read my counterparts correctly, we all think this is positive. And I've got to tell you that Lisa McCotter has done one heck of a job managing that mall. And you seem like somebody that might be tough to work for. My concerns, you have time to address. And the one thing I would caution you on is I think a rooftop facility for launches and things like that are great. We have a concern, I think it's Member Grant that had a concern, that it not be used for music purposes, because particularly at that height, that music will go all over the place. So I think you're doing a great job. You're an asset to the community.
Member Grant.
That's me.
Member Porter.
This is for Mr. Wright. I think you mentioned that. Yeah.
Please do.
I think you mentioned there would be 3 stages of development.
Yes, sir.
For your project.
I don't have the phases right here.
There is a phasing schedule, I believe, on page 92 of your packet.
Okay.
And you'll see buildings F and G and will be phase 1. That's the multifamily.
Okay.
May I just pass this on and then just.
Okay, so yeah, okay. I was just wondering how much time between each phase.
As Brad mentioned, one of the most important things, and we've been working with Brad and Peggy for some time, is that phase 1 is the essential portion of the project. We're basically building the infrastructure. We're doing the demolition. We're putting the sewer line, a brand new sewer line that's coming from Hopkins all the way out to US 1. We're tapping off the existing sewer lines on the north side and also on the south side. And we're trenching, we're doing a lot of things, and again, we have tenants there as well. So this has to be kind of being a actually mechanical and aerospace engineer, we have to make sure that everybody's going to be comfortable as we're moving along and trying to do this. And the people that didn't make it today, and these are all the signatures that I want to show you, there's about almost 400 people that have signed up for the project. So I told my staff I want to do this just to kind of
It's a good visual.
Maybe this goes on a live TV. I can give that to you if you like. Any other questions I may answer?
I'd like to know, I don't know whether you know this, are these rental units or ownership? Is there an opportunity to own?
340 units. They're all going to be rental units, somewhere between 171 bedrooms. So we have 65,000 square feet of a parking garage on the first floor. On the second floor, we have 171 bedrooms. And then close to about 100 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and about 70 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath, going all the way up to the penthouse.
What are you estimating? And I know it's a guesstimate of what your rental units per rental will be
Good
for
question.
the one
I
bedroom.
just have the answer for you.
Thank you.
All right. So on the one bedroom, we're looking at somewhere between $1,200 to $1,300 a month. They're about 800 square feet.
800 square feet? Does that go with what the market is right now in Titusville?
I think we're within the market. I'm meeting with Rocket Real Estate and a couple of other ones that I've already met. We're right in that range right now. I don't think that the rental is going to go much higher within the next couple of years. The 2-bedroom, 2-bath are going to be around $1,900 a month. They're almost 1,300 square feet. And then the 3 bedrooms and penthouses are going to go for like $2,900 a month. Those are large, 1,700 square feet with 2.5 baths.
Will there be a river view of any of either of any of these units? Or only in the penthouse?
I believe that we would have view from probably the 3rd floor up, second or third floor up. Right.
Okay.
We
And
asked
there's
for
parking-
maximum height. I don't know if we're going to go up to 80 or 90 feet. I know sometimes that scares people. I totally get what you said about music. I don't like the music to be over 70 decibel. You know, I've been in the hotel business before, so I make sure that those things are going to be, taken care of.
So seven stories maximum for the hotel.
That's correct, ma'am.
And that's with a variance, right?
Right.
Okay.
Now, just one other thing, just below one of the L-shaped apartment, it's going to be a 25,000 square feet of retail. So we're doing that in the first phase in order to be able to move some of our existing tenants in that location, because these tenants need to go somewhere. And they can't afford going to Titus Landing, I can tell you right now. So for that reason, we have to make sure it's affordable for them to be able to move to that location. Now, of course, when we get to the medical and office building and so on Hopkins, we have Cindy and Neil that is going to be moving into one of the boxes. They're going to be close to about 20,000 square feet. We don't have any prospective tenants right now for the commercial portion. On the hotel side, I'm looking at Choice Hotel with a double brand, short and long stay, and possibly Hampton as well.
If council approves this, sir, what's the shovel? When's the shovel going in the ground?
Hopefully the pandemic is going to end soon so we can get out of this mess. I would imagine right after this, we would still have to go to the city council a couple of times. Then we have to go to the site review. That hopefully should not take, I don't know what the timeline is for the staff.
The site plan review, the site plan review can take a few months for it to complete, and then they get their construction permit. So I would say probably 2 months. They could probably at the fast.
Could you clear land by April of 2020?
I would be on that bulldozer right in front of Sears, taking it out myself as soon as I'll be invited to join me, actually. Take a video of me doing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I just hope that, we can go a lot faster, Brad, because these tenants, as William mentioned, it's really hard to put a lot of Band-Aids. We've used all kind of Band-Aids, different sizes, but, you can only do so much because I can't replace roof. We have a bunch of leaky roofs. I cannot replace the air conditioning units because within a year or two, we have to demo everything out. It will not fit to the new buildings.
Commissioners, Mr. Grant.
Mr. Rice was up first.
I'm sorry. Mr. Rice first.
Yeah, I'm just going to go in order. Some of my comments are going to direct towards staff, and some might be either you or your professionals that you have here tonight. Staff on page 49, you have a table there with development standards, and when it gets down to maximum building coverage and minimum lot area and all that, you just say over for this urban mixed use, this is per the master plan. It'd be really helpful if you had that data, if you would plug that data in so I don't have to go search for it every time.
There isn't one, sir. It's basically just a layout. So if you're looking for a table
I was just looking for the minimum lot width, the things that are going to be the minimum per the master, you say per the master plan.
So in other words, that's as it's laid out. So there isn't, the lot width you're talking about here for the commercial zoning district, that's for the whole development. That's for the whole property. So that would be the minimum width for that zoning district.
Okay, that's for the whole property, not for okay.
Yeah, individual lots. So we don't even have a plan for how this property might potentially be subdivided. The applicant can go through a process of what's called a non-residential division, but that would require a site plan anyway. So through the site plan process, we would determine where the lot lines would be in the future.
Okay, then my next question for staff is on page 56. Okay, under streets, it's about the third paragraph down. Okay, it says internal driveways without specifics to their width and dimension, but they have to meet city standards when they go through site plan review.
Right. So the code. So when you look at the criteria I was mentioning earlier on that at the end of the packet or at the end of this particular agenda item from the UV zoning district, it talks about having to meet city standards for a street. But then it allows you to do it as a public, dedicated to the city as public street or as a private street. It does not say that every street is supposed to be that way. So we identified one particular one that they would need.
It says that private streets have to meet city standards. It's very clear in the code.
Right. So if you look at the plan, is this a strip development? Is it kind of like a plaza development, but just buildings closer to the driveway? So that road, that driveway we're pointing out to, that north-south driveway, that was the one that we thought most fit what this is trying to ask for. And in all intents and purposes, it is a commercial driveway. So now this code is asking them to design that to city street standards.
I could buy into the commercial driveway theory.
So we're asking them that they would have to meet city street standards. And of course, through the site plan process, if there's a need to deviate in any way, there is a process for that. And that's through the waiver process, through the site plan process.
Okay. In parking, and this is just more for food for thought, the 2.5 parking spaces for multifamily is ridiculously high. And we really need to look at changing our code. Just food for thought. On page 13,
the staff report?
The staff report.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, yes, page 57 in the agenda page. On the top, you say the city street design standards can be private, and be dedicated for public use, guaranteeing access. So a private road is not dedicated. It's an easement. An access easement might go over it. But I didn't understand when you say dedicated, if, private is not dedicated.
Right.
So it means transfer of land, where an access easement means something different.
I think that's what the code is trying to get at, is at the very minimum, we need some kind of access easement over there to allow the public to enjoy the benefit of going over the street.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Of what it says. Okay. Next page, page 58. Okay. Item D, staff comments. D. You say things, and there's a lot of ambiguous language in the staff report, like the plan generally meets. Well, when you say stuff like that, it makes me think as a board member, generally, does that mean it doesn't fully meet? Okay. And I see that several places throughout the staff report.
An ideal code would have very specifics as to what is required as far as the development form, the form of development that you want to see on this property, but that's not the case. So that section of the code of the design criteria in the urban village zoning district, which I referred to you at the end of this particular agenda item, are very generalized. And then it refers to the US 1 quarter master plan. And in fact, there's an illustration of how this property could conceptually be redeveloped, but it includes the 4 corner properties and actually shows a concept of large buildings at those corners up against the right-of-way, but doesn't say that's what it has to be redeveloped as. So unfortunately, all we have is very generalized language, if you will, that we have to work with the applicant to try and help, work with them to see if we can help meet the intent of what's stated in that plan in the code.
Generally meets the intent of the US 1/4 master plan. Either it does meet the intent or doesn't meet the intent. There's no general about it in my mind.
So there's another I'll give you an example. It says you will not create strip development. A strip development a classic strip development is a retail store with a giant parking lot in front of it along that right of way. You don't want that. This urban village zoning district was trying to discourage that kind of development. Now, it's impossible for Mr. Wright to be able to adhere to that in a strict sense. So he can't put all of his buildings up against the public right-of-way along Countryside or Country Club, US 1, Hopkins, and Narvaez. It's just not practical. But he is meeting that intent in some areas of his development. But in other areas, he's replacing that intent of putting those buildings up against those roads by creating a main street internal to the development. So, yes, I stated the word meets. So I'm leaving it for the commission to determine whether he's meeting the intent of the
If you're
code
leaving
here.
it up to us, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Page 62 of the agenda, the phasing comment. And you talked a little bit earlier about, staff felt pretty strong about having the residential component, built at the same time some of the commercials being built or start thereafter. And it looked like the phasing plan, they're going to do that now. But your language here says to ensure the property is a mixed-use development, the staff strongly recommends. Doesn't say, it just says strongly recommend. It's just a recommendation. It's not a condition.
Conditions at the end of the report.
No, but the way you word it here, it's not a condition. It's just strongly recommend.
Right. What you're pointing out is analysis of part of the staff report to help justify the condition later on that we've identified at the end of the report. That's how our staff reports have always been presented to you. So we strongly recommend that. And so to help ensure that, we are proposing a condition at the end of the report that says that. So when he goes forward with this phasing, it's very clear that without that condition, you may come back, or a property owner may come back and say, I want to start with phase 2 first. And you look at the master plan, who's going to say that, no, 1, it comes before 2? Well, there's no condition to ensure that. And that's what we want to make sure. That's what we want to strongly recommend, that a condition like that is stated as part of the approval of this master plan.
Do you have a problem with that condition?
Mr. Rice, let me tell you, I've done developments in other states. This man sitting right there is probably the only planner I know that stays within the code. I mean, left or right, there hasn't been really any gray areas. No, we cannot possibly demo the western portion of the mall first. There is no way. That's where the tenants are. So we're removing tenants. We're not extending leases to make sure that we are going to only take out the easterly portion of the mall where we have to build the residential and also the infrastructure.
Okay. So that condition would be a problem for you?
That should be a condition, no problem. Phase 1 will be phase 1. Phase 2 will be phase 2. The only difference, we discussed this, me and Brad, if I can get my lender, and depends on this pandemic, we may be able to do phase 1, the residential, and the hotel on the first phase, and then the second phase being the commercial. Why am I saying that? 2 things. One is moving equipments, going from US 1 to Hopkins, then going back again to US 1 is difficult. And number 2, I don't know how the market is about the hotels being built in this timeline. So I'd rather, for now, stay with the phase 1 being residential, and it can be a condition. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Member Riley.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I'm not close to being done.
You're not close to being done?
Okay.
Get closer.
What is the results of the community meeting? Can someone, elaborate a little bit
Only
on the
6
community
people
and what
showed
the
up.
feedback was from the community, especially the people across the street on Navarro?
We 6 people showed up. There was one resident that came from Narvaz.
Okay.
He was in support of it.
Okay, just one?
I understand the concern that you have about the headlights going into somebody's house. We have to have a street to divide for people to be able to drive in and out of the. We can't just have them go around and around. So we got to have a street in between the 2 phases. And if you want me to buy that property, I don't know if I can afford buying it by the time I get through with this one, to be honest with you. But I'm sure we can work something out. I don't know what we can work out, really.
Okay, thank you. Page 68 of the agenda. I'm looking at the submittal checklist. And why is the notarized owner authorization form not checked, and why is number 10 not checked?
The preliminary school concurrency was provided to us after this application was submitted to us, so we did
the
get that.
notarized owner authorization form?
Mr. Wright is the sole owner of this property.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Wright is the sole owner of this property. So if we have a question about whether we need to get about who the owner is, that's typically when we ask for an owner authorization.
They don't need to sign that document?
When an agent is submitting on behalf of the owner, that's when we require the owner's authorization for the agent to be allowed to proceed.
Okay. The conceptual site plan checklist, next page, none of it's checked. I just was wondering why.
That should be complete. I apologize.
Okay.
When we receive an application, we're by law required to determine whether it's complete within 30 days, and we did that.
Okay. Now I'm going to go to the site plan stuff. This is probably where your staff comes into play. First of all, let me just say, it's a great site plan. It really is. The one thing that caught my eye when I was reading the narrative, I was thinking in my head, boy, I hope they put that wall behind the landscaping on Navarez, because it's really going to help Navarez and buffer. And you did exactly that. So I was thrilled to see that. It is an intense, but this area needs it. I mean,
Mr. Rice, right now, they're looking at what? They're looking at Bill's truck coming in, semi coming in that little street from Narvaz. If I was living on Narvaz, I prefer to look at this project than having to look at these Bill's semi coming in, ripping off. I mean, these are, difficult for them to park. It's just, I mean, there's a trade-off, obviously.
Yeah, and that's the only thing in this site plan that caught my eye of being, was that one exit. That was it. That's really the only thing that caught my eye.
But thanks to Brad, because he's the one pushed me to put that in.
I tried to blame staff earlier, but I did, I wasn't able to do that. So, but that kept my, and with the building height, the only reason the building heights are there really is because you have the first floor, second floor parking. That's elevating.
Only first floor parking, 65,000 square feet.
But that elevates it,
That's
10, 12 feet right there, just because of that. So
and the view.
That plays in that.
I can charge more for the view.
Yeah. In the garage, is the garage private, serving only
For
the
the tenants.
apartment or is it open to the public too?
Well, let me define that. Right now, we have a shared parking, so I guess I don't want to step out of my boundary. So the question would be shared parking for Bruce and Joseph, whether the parking would be only for the apartments.
Well, when we do the analysis for shared parking, the assumption is it's shared parking.
Should be
It's
at the podium.
okay, if you've got office and retail and residential, the residential kind of uses it at night, and the office and retail uses it during the day. So there is still that. Sorry. So when we do our analysis in terms of the shared parking, we assume that, it is shared, like in terms of residences would have it there in the morning, at night, office and retail would basically use those during the day. But a lot of times, like in a parking garage, you do have the parking for the residents, and the shared portion, when we do our analysis, makes the assumption that there is a set number for residents, a set number for retail, and a set number for all the other uses. And then there's a percentage of those that overlap, and that's how we come up with the shared parking. So just because you have 100 residential parking spaces, that doesn't mean that all 100 of those are going to go to hotel or office, because hotel and office also has a certain amount, but it gives you a small percentage that do overlap, and so you don't have to put in 1,000 parking spaces if because you could maybe save 15-20%. So you only have to put in 800 or 750 versus 1,000, and so you're saving that amount of land space and cost. So.
Yeah, just real quickly on the building height, we have the parking garage on the south building. It's retail on the north building. So retail typically has much higher ceiling in it. With respect to parking, if you're really going to have to pull out your glasses on this one, but if you look at the floor plan where the parking is striped in the garage,
I saw that.
You'll notice it's tandem along the southern edge.
Oh, it is.
So the idea is that would be dedicated 4 units. So if I beat my wife home, I go in first, and then she pulls in the space behind me, vice versa. The advantage to that is, fortunately, the building footprint right now at this level affords us that dimension that we can really pack the parking in there and not have it as surface parking. So we reduce a lot of that, what we would need on the outside, which leaves us more open space. So.
The other thing that I'll mention that from stormwater perspective, you include rain gardens, you include some of the bioswales, you include low impact development type things, and I think that's really important. So I was really glad to see that you implemented that type of strategy on this site. I think that's going to help. Having that baffle box to treat off-site stuff is an excellent move for the community because of the Indian River Lagoon and some of the issues we're facing with that. Let's see. Sorry, I have to flip from page to page because I write my notes on the PDFs. We addressed that.
Let me have.
I think that's it. I want to say job well done. Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm excited about the project, and I'm excited for our community to have a quality project like this.
Member Riley.
Yeah, I just had a question for Mr. Parrish. You said earlier that in order to get these height requirements, we'd have to have another vote later on for conditional use permit. Assuming that vote went negative, what would they be left with?
Just a shorter building.
Just what?
A shorter building. So the maximum height right now in this zoning district is 50 feet.
So it would be 50 feet?
Right, unless they were denied what they requested, but only approved for a different height. So, for example, they asked for the full 90 feet for the hotel, and the council only approved them for 70 feet. That's possible.
Okay, but if we vote on this today, then they would be assured of at least 50 feet.
Yeah, that's what the zoning says, yes.
But us voting today doesn't keep us from later saying you're limited to 50 feet.
It does change the dynamics of that meeting a little bit because it won't be handled typically it'll be handled like a typical CUP application that's going before you, but because you've approved this conceptually, that this is a height that's okay, now what you're going to say is, when it comes before you, is what they're proposing appropriate? What are they adding to it? Is there something about this building and that height that's going to cause a shadow on another property or some kind of glare or nuisance or something that might be to the surrounding properties? Or because you're pretty much what you're saying here is the location is okay. But now it's going to be kind of hard to say that a location is not okay later on. You're going to want to talk about other things related to the building itself, where they've already got it primarily approved of where it's going to be. Now, they propose a site plan later on that modifies this a little bit, and the building shifted something, maybe closer to a lot line a few feet, or, you know, if it's not insignificant that they required them to have not go through a complete amendment to this plan or not. You know, that's something you'd have to consider at that time.
Okay, but with the conditional use permit, they can go up to 90 feet. Is that what you're?
No, the conditional use permit just says right now that they would have to get the permit in order to go above 50 feet if they're not putting anything else in that building. Above 60 feet if the building already has some other vertical use, mixed use in it. But could not exceed more than 90 feet per this master plan. Because if they wanted to propose a 100-foot building later on after this master plan approved, that would be a significant deviation from this plan. That'd be an increase. So it's kind of like adding another 10 residential units above what's already would be approved of this master plan.
Okay, thank you.
May I elaborate on this, if you don't mind? Is that okay?
Yes, please.
I want to elaborate just a couple of things. Number one is I don't understand why, for example, Horizon Apartments, Sandpoint up the street, they can go up well over 50 feet. But then, you know, when it comes down to this area, we have a 50 feet. Now, going back to the previous set that we presented, the plan was to actually build parking structure at a cost of $15,000 per space, about $1 million per floor. So, as I mentioned before, this is a dense project, and so for that reason, we have to have the parking on the first floor. That's why it pushes everything up to over 60 or 70 feet. But here's what I don't understand. Why there is a certain criteria for height up there in Horizon, where the Horizon is, and then in our case, is less? Why can't it be uniform?
You want to answer that, Mr. Rice?
I do.
I don't want to comment on that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to talk about height, okay? Because back several years ago when we had a referendum on height, okay, and there was arguments not to have height on the river, all I heard is height needs to be on the west side of US 1. Height needs to be on the west side of US 1. And it was over and over, and it has stuck with me for 15 years, okay? And he's right. It's going to be on the west side of US 1. So why are we restricting height now on the west side of US 1 when the community actually said the height problem is on the east side of US 1? So
it's one city, right?
you know, and yes, there was a code amendment for Sandpoint, and then the DMU. It's a different zoning category, a completely different set of rules because of the zoning category it's in and everything. And yes, it was altered and it was increased.
We can't really change the project and reduce the number of apartments because of the height. The hotel cannot be really. We have a car wash in the front, the lobby area, the restaurant is there. So realistically, these guests coming into the hotel, they got to have some kind of a view, being on the on the west side.
Yeah, unfortunately, you have a process that you have to go through.
No, I understand.
With conditional use, and
I just wanted to elaborate on what.
But the height issue in my problem, in my mind, is not really an issue because it's on the west side.
Then you should approve the 80-foot right now.
Right.
I have hit the wrong button, and so, okay, and now people have gone away. Okay, I didn't touch anything. Okay. Have we ended the discussion or questions with commissioners? Well, he did, and then he went away. Member Grant is back again.
Fell asleep.
Uh-oh. Member Grant had a short nap and is back.
Madam Chairman, I would like to submit a motion.
Thank you, sir. Do so.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion to approve CPA 1-2020 Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment to change the future land use designation from commercial high intensity to urban mixed use designation. That's supposed to do them one at a time, right?
We would recommend that, yes.
Okay.
I would second the motion and make a comment. If you commit to building a Chick-fil-A on this site, I guarantee you'll pass.
I knew it.
If you're willing to take the traffic coming to Chick-fil-A, and you guys approve it, I get their butt over there.
I think it was just time to inject some humor into this. Second.
We like those trees and we like that chicken. Okay. We have one motion on the floor and a second. What discussion do we have? None heard. Roll call, please.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Member Porter?
Yes.
Member Rice?
Yes.
Member Riley?
Yes.
Member Aton?
Yes.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Chairman Spido?
Yes. I'd like to ask Mr. White, I can't thank you enough for, first of all, thinking of this site, thinking of our city, adding something that is aesthetically very lovely in its conception. May you stick it to this conception. May you remember our trees. Would you remember our sensitivity to height and honor the Indian River Lagoon? Welcome.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to recommend approval of comprehensive plan amendment to future land use element policy 1.11.15.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Riley?
Yes.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Member Porter?
Yes.
Member Aton?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Member Rice?
Yes.
Chairman Spido?
Yes.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to approve the rezone of the property from regional commercial zoning district to the urban village with the master plan with conditions. And do I have to, we know what the conditions are. I don't have to go through those, do I?
Not unless you have any amendments to the conditions.
I don't have any amendments to the condition.
Conditions on record. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Member Riley?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Member Porter?
Yes.
Member Aton?
Yes.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Member Rice?
Yes.
Chairman Spido?
Yes. Is there another one?
No.
That's it. Again, thank you, sir. We have item 9C on the agenda, please. Staff presentation, please.
Right. Good evening, board. So this item begins on page 127 of you all's agenda. Let you guys take a second to get there. And we have a short presentation. So we're here tonight for the CUP 5-2021 for the vacant lot adjacent to the existing U-Haul moving and storage. So the request is for a conditional use permit to allow a mini warehouse and warehouse facility. The code requires a CUP for both the mini warehouse and warehouse uses when the future land use designation is not industrial. The property does have a previous CUP and various variances associated with previous attempts at developing the site. So the proposed use is a 44,000 square foot warehouse facility. To the north are, well, before you are the surrounding land uses. The zoning to the north is single-family medium density. To the south, the general use. To the east, community commercial, single-family high density. And to the west, general use as well. So just the conditions for the CUP, staff does recommend approval with the following conditions. A fence and vegetated screening along the property lines next to the residential properties. It should be consistent with the landscape plan that is submitted with the conceptual site. Number 2, the hours of operation should be from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And number 3, with the hours after hours operation, a lighting plan should be submitted with the site plan. So I just want to direct you guys to page. Give me a second. That is page 143, the agenda. So before you, that is the conceptual plan, but I just want to let you guys know that emphasis on conceptual, there are a couple of things on there that if you look at it, you might, raise some concerns. One being the page following that. 144, is that 144 is what I said? You said 43. Yes, 144, I'm sorry about that. So like I said, this is a conceptual plan for the proposed use. So the landscape buffer adjacent to the residential units, this is not what is going to be brought to you by the applicant. This is just a conceptual. Staff does recommend additional landscaping to screen from the residential uses, as well as there are some landscape islands that do not meet code on this conceptual map, but of course at the site plan review level, we'll definitely be able to have that addressed and for them to submit something that is up to the code. Further down are some conceptuals of the development for the 2060 site. And I did want to point out that the existing use will not be impacted by the development itself. The existing use will stay as is, and all development, of course, will be on the 2060 Garden Street. And that concludes my presentation.
Is that it, staff?
Yes.
Cards, please.
Jeff Banker.
Mr. Anker.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Banker, Highland Engineering, Claremont, Florida. I'm the engineer for the project, and just want to thank staff for that presentation. This project is for a mini warehouse project with a small warehouse component. There are 402 units proposed inside the two-story building. The height's been kept to 2 stories because we're trying to be sensitive to the adjacent residential. We've worked with staff on the landscape buffering, and we'll be happy to satisfy that during site plan review. We've agreed to provide 6-foot privacy fence along that entire eastern boundary to make sure that we buffer that adequately. The warehouse use is more bulk storage you've probably seen the product. It's U-box storage. It's a system where they store it inside the unit. They'll go to a customer's house, pick up their merchandise, and bring it back to the facility to store that. The facility is secured. Access to the building is controlled by keypad access. Customers reserve units online and will gain access to their facility through that keypad access. That kind of concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions you have or any comments or any information you need.
Can I ask a question? Have you had a community meeting, sir, with Northside residents?
No, ma'am, we have not.
Okay. What's the time frame on that, please? Is it not required? Okay. 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 And the building is 2 stories high, sir?
One part of it is two-story. The warehouse part is only single-story.
And you're following landscape recommendations?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you have any large trees on this lot, sir?
There are some large trees that we've had surveyed, and we're trying to protect the ones that we can.
By trying to protect, you're going to protect those, right?
We'll review that tree survey.
Okay, thank you.
I have an answer to your community meeting question. The section is 34-13 of the code. 34-13 is called community engagement. Subsection B says every application for development that requires a land use change, rezoning, master plan, or development agreement shall include evidence of a community engagement meeting at least 14 days prior to the first public meeting.
Okay, so is the answer yes or no?
It's not one of those. It's not required.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Commissioner, what questions do we have, please? Member Rice.
Well, I'll wait till you close.
Okay. Is this a close? Do we have any additional cards? Oh, I'm sorry.
Stan Johnston.
Mr. Johnson. Thank you. Any additional cards?
No.
Okay, Mr. Rice.
Staff, there was 2 variances, one from 2002 and one from 2008. Variances typically run with the land, okay, not with the project, unless those variances were approved and tied to a site plan. Do you know if those variances are still in effect? I remember parts of the 2008 one because I was the staff member that presented it to the variance board at the time. Okay, so I'm familiar. I think it was tied to a site plan, but I don't want to swear to that. Okay, but it's important for the applicant to know that if these variances were granted and they run with the land, okay, that's an important factor. And unless there was conditions placed on the board's approval saying per site plan from so-and-so dated such and such.
Give me 1 second while I look up the variance itself.
And I take it in the same breath, the CUPs have all expired because they have an expiration date, so I know
Correct.
those probably have expired. I think I had one more question. That's it. Okay.
The variance number 19-2008B was approved to, it was then section 59-49B by vote of 4-0, July 23rd, 2008, with the following conditions: to provide a 35-foot wide landscape buffer and screening according to the code along the east side of the property. The fence and buffer should begin from the southeast corner of the property to the north end of Lot 8 property to the east of the project. Number 2, condition: the landscape requirements within the 35-foot buffer area adjacent to the proposed building should be twice the code required minimum. So this is before my time. I'd have
So
to
it
do
was not, so it wasn't really tied to a site plan?
No, it isn't.
Okay, so the applicant, and correct me if I'm wrong, legal, the applicant has a choice here that he can abide by the variance or he can meet the current landscape code, correct?
Yes.
Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to point that out. Okay. I don't know which one's better or worse, but variances do run with the land. They don't run with a project. Okay. In staff, my other comment, and I think you addressed it, okay, but I just want to make sure in my mind, the plans that were presented in this conceptual site plan is not really it's just a concept plan. So you didn't review this to see that the landscape plan that was presented met the current tree ordinance or the current landscape code. Is that a correct statement?
That is correct, but obviously at the site plan review, that will
Right,
be
it
addressed.
will have to, but.
Correct.
Okay, so no analysis has really been done on any of these plans in here to see whether they meet code or not. That still has to go through the process.
It's very, very conceptual.
Okay. That's it. That's the only questions I had.
Do any other members have questions? Call for a motion.
I'll make, yeah, to.
Member Rice?
Yes, I recommend approval of the CUP 5-2021 at 2060 Garden Street, U-Haul moving and storage.
Do I have a second?
With conditions?
With conditions.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Member Riley?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Member Rice?
Yes.
Member Porter?
Yes.
Member Aton?
Yes.
Chairman Spidel?
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I do not have a page, we'll wait, see if I have a page 3 with my notes. Petitions and requests.
Stan Johnston?
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue. And this handout that I thought you have a black and white, this applies to all of the presentations that I've made tonight. So I just wanted Laura to know that. So I also want to comment is that regarding the Searstown Mall conversion to using a conditional use permit, I'm opposed to additional increases in high rises. So I'm just letting you know that. If he wanted to do a high rise building, he should have started with the zoning instead of trying to get something passed and then going for a conditional use permit. So I'm against the increase of height on that. But now I'll go to the issue that I've sent to you before, is everyone didn't receive it, is number 16 on this email of September I believe it's the 18th. It's number 16 has to do with P&Z. It says failure to respond to questions. City does not respond. Many concerns and problems are brought forward regarding the health, safety, and welfare of the community, and that's what I'm licensed to protect. Yet City Council, and then I have P&Z. That's you guys. P&Z, TEC, CRA, FDEP, Parish Hospital Board, city staff, and even our news media, Florida Today, will not even attempt to respond to or look into these matters. Why? Well, ask them. Ask yourself. In other words, I put all these things. These are photographic. We have photographic proof. We have not only photographic proof, but we have testing results and so forth, and that the city is not being honest on these issues. And this has to do with planning and zoning because it has to do with Indian River and the health of our river. It's being misrepresented by city, by P&Z, and everybody else. So you should look into this. Reading further, it says why, for example, city claims that 50% of the general budget revenue is spent on public safety. If so, why can't or didn't our city turn off the fountains that sprayed cars and people with urine, feces, and blood urine-borne pathogens? That's sewage for 4 months. Why didn't they do that? Why did city use employees not trained and not vaccinated to work with sewage? As far as I'm concerned, that's OSHA violation. Is this a case of negligence, cover-up of guilt, confusion, apathy? What is it? I mean, we should ask questions. I can't get answers from P&Z. I can't get answers from.
Thank you, Mr.
Ask for another minute. I don't expect to get it because you guys are closed doors.
Watch it, Mr. Johnson. Okay, I want to welcome Kathy Riley as a regular member, please. I want to welcome Mr. Faison as an alternate member. Hope to see you. I want to thank everyone for their faith in me and putting up with my mistakes. You might see them in another couple of weeks, okay? And staff, do you have any further comment? Any
No.
reports from any membership?
The only thing I would like to add is that we have 3 more training sessions that will begin at 5 o'clock before the next 3 planning and zoning meetings here, and they're not advertised or noticed as meetings. It's just a training session for you to come in and sit and join us.
Can you urge Lori to make sure that everybody gets an email on this?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is that it? Mr. Alton, you look like you need to say something. No? Okay.
I do.
Okay, you do, Mr. Richardson.
Yes, I just wanted to thank the members for showing up for Dwight Seaver's reception. It surprised him, and he was taken aback by that. And also, I think when I made the motion and we passed a motion that said that we'll support the staff's recommendation of the tree ordinance, I think it made a difference in the council deciding to pass the tree ordinance. TEC, leadership of TEC came along with us, and so we're unified that night at city council meeting. Well, it took 2 sessions of city council to get it passed, but it wasn't ideal, what we worked on for 2 years, but it's a step. And I just wanted to thank the members